On June 8, 2005, an empty train was launched on Kingda Ka, the former king of roller coasters. But this would be no ordinary test run, as circumstances led to the launch track being left utterly destroyed just 18 days after the ride's grand debut. Six Flags Great Adventure's official statement was that, quote, "A piece of lining covering the trough under the coaster's tracks had dislodged and damaged a number of other parts." The accident shut down the ride for nearly all that summer, a time when Kingda Ka was the hottest new roller coaster on the planet and should have been catering to the masses it was built to attract. Thankfully, there were no injuries as no one was aboard the train involved in the accident. But a test rider had just ridden the train prior, and had any riders been aboard the train involved in the accident, things could have gone far worse. Now, what exactly happened to leave the launch track looking like this? And how did this even occur in the first place? In this video, I'll tell you the real story behind this historic accident, as well as the measures taken to prevent the scenario from ever occurring again, allowing the ride to run perfectly safe for the remainder of its career. Let me preface that in no way is this video meant to cast Six Flags Great Adventure or Kingda Ka's manufacturer Intamin in a negative light. It's just meant to put out the correct story, since many places, including myself, have told an incorrect version. And if you have ever ridden Kingda Ka, I can assure that you were perfectly safe. If you enjoyed this video as it plays, it would be greatly appreciated if you could hit the like button, as that helps the channel greatly against the YouTube algorithm. Alright, let's launch in. Taking Kingda Ka's heavy trains from a standstill to the speed needed to ride over a 456-foot tower was no easy feat. The ride utilized an immensely powerful hydraulic launch system capable of outputting a peak of 20,800 horsepower. This intricate machinery sat in a hydraulic room near the base of Kingda Ka's top hat. But interestingly, none of this hydraulic system was the direct cause of the accident, although the incredible strength of it certainly worsened the damage. The damage was instead started by a stationary piece of the launch track. To describe to you the full situation, let's outline the components involved in the launch track. Kingda Ka's launch track, as well as every other hydraulic launching roller coaster built by ride manufacturer Intamin, featured a steel C-channel or trough shown here. The C-channel was a critical fixture that housed the components linking the train to the powerful hydraulic launch system, such as the catch car or sled, which attached to the train to catapult it down the launch track. The catch car would slide back and forth within the C-channel. The C-channel is also where the three steel cables were housed that drove the catch car up and down the launch track. Two of the cables were launch cables and were situated in the far left and right of the C-channel. They were positioned below these horizontal steel coverings shown here, and then inside these steel coverings here, which were used to create a slot for the catch car. Additionally, this created separate lanes for the two launch cables. The third cable was the return cable, used to return the catch car back to the start of the launch, and it simply sat in the middle of the C-channel without any protection. You can see it here returning the catch car to the start of the launch. These three cables were wound into a massive cable drum in the hydraulic room, and when the hydraulic launch system roared to life, it spun the cable drum, winding the two launch cables into the drum while unwinding the return cable, catapulting the catch car and thus the train forward down the launch track with breathtaking power. Lining the launch track were retractable copper brake fins called the acceleration brakes. They were part of the ride's magnetic brake system and were placed to the left and right of the C-channel. Their purpose was to slow a train if it did not launch fast enough to clear the top hat and rolled backwards into the launch. They would drop into the launch track before each launch, allowing the train to launch freely. And once the train zoomed past, the brakes would raise in clusters to the set braking position in case of a rollback. And there wasn't just brakes for the train. Within the C-channel itself were similar brake fins for the launch system called the catch car brakes. These brake fins were primarily located in the last third or so of the launch and were used to slow down the catch car and launch system following a launch. Unlike the acceleration brakes, the catch car brakes remained in the set position during a launch in order to slow down the catch car once it had reached its intended top speed. To fit within the C-channel, the two brake fins of each pair were close together, leaving enough room for the return cable to pass between them. This leads to the cause of Kingda Ka's 2005 accident, this durable black polymer which sat at the bottom center of the C-channel. For comparison, it's very similar to the polymer used in troughs for the chain lift for chains to glide over. On Kingda Ka, the catch car would glide over the stationary material as it traversed up and down the launch track. Now, this polymer used to line the entire launch track, just as it does here on Stormrunner at Hershey Park. But following the 2005 accident, Kingda Ka's C-channel was modified to what we see here, where the polymer only existed at the start of the launch and after that the material disappeared. But originally, the polymer consisted of many individual pieces just as it does here on Stormrunner, and each piece is bolted to the C-channel. Holes on the top surface of the polymer tuck the bolt heads away from the catch car so that the catch car doesn't strike them. Here we see the bottom of Kingda Ka's C-channel in May of 2005. These narrow pairs of bolts are the other end of the bolt holding the polymer pieces in place. On June 8, 2005, at roughly 3 p.m., Great Adventure was carrying out a number of test runs at Kingda Ka. The ride had been open to guests earlier in the day, but had closed down sometime prior to this, and the park was cycling Kingda Ka as there was a lot of pressure to get the coaster back open again. Allegedly, the midday closure was either due to a strange clunking noise being made on the launch track with each launch, or because of an unrelated ride fault. Either way, the story goes that as the park worked to reopen the ride, the clunking noises became more noticeable, and the ride was extensively checked and tested to try and determine the cause of the strange noise. After exhausting all options, the cause of the noise could still not be determined. Unknowing at the time, the noise was a loose piece of polymer at the base of the C-channel, about a quarter of the way down the launch track, being struck by the catch car with each launch. I believe a bolt had sheared off the piece at the front end, allowing it to raise up a little, and it was being struck by the catch car, probably growing weaker and weaker with each launch. Unfortunately, there were allegedly no requirements from Intamin to check the polymer lining the bottom of the C-channel, so it was not inspected. With there being so much pressure to get the ride open again, and after running through an entire checklist of things to look for, the park looked to reopen the coaster. But before doing so, it was decided that an engineer from Intamin would test ride the coaster. Kingda Ka ran all 4 trains at the time. Be sure to check out my full video on 4 train operations if you need to, but in doing so, it would dispatch 2 trains at a time from either side of the station. So the engineer from Intamin boarded the first train of a pair, the orange train, while the second train, the dark blue train, ran empty. The orange train with the engineer was launched, and the train cycled as normal, returning to the station with no issue. The operator then went to launch the dark blue train, which had no riders aboard it, and this is when everything went down. The operator clicked the 2 launch buttons, initiating the launch sequence. The acceleration brakes dropped, and the train rolled back slightly to engage the catch car. Then the launch kicked in, and the dark blue train took off. Now everything I'm about to explain happened in just a matter of seconds. About 1/4 of the way down the launch track, the catch car struck the loose piece of polymer, but this time the piece of polymer broke free from the C-channel and was being pushed forward by the catch car. It was pushed into the next piece of polymer, causing that piece to break free also. The broken pieces continued to push into the next piece, and the next piece, and the next piece, and the next piece, breaking them all free from the base of the C-channel and pushing them forward. At first, the ride control system had no idea anything wrong was occurring, so the hydraulic launch system still worked to get the train up to speed. And due to the high speed the train had already reached when the incident began, the operator at controls had little time to react. The polymer pieces quickly filled up the C-channel, and with the catch car forcing them forward with such a high level of thrust, they began wreaking havoc on the launch system as they were pushed forward by the incredible strength of the launch system. Up in the operator booth, the e-stop was hit as the damage began to unfold, and while this was the thing that any well-trained operator would have done, it unfortunately led to further damage. The e-stop cut all power to the ride, so the launch system immediately stopped accelerating further. It also meant the launch cables pulling the catch car forward suddenly switched from being in tension to compression, leaving some slack in the cables, which normally is no problem since the cables sit in a guided lane. But in this case, the polymer pieces had bent the cover for the left launch cable up out of position, and had even shoved their way into the lane that cable ran through. This, combined with the slack of the launch cable due to the e-stop, allowed the left launch cable to come out of its lane and out onto the track. The e-stop also caused the acceleration brakes to raise out of the track to the set position, exposing them to the rogue steel cable still traveling at high speed. With these conditions set, the thick steel cable began bending, slicing, and even melting through almost everything in its path. It began ripping and bending the left side acceleration brakes as well as the catch car brakes, which had been in the set position, ready to slow down the catch car just like they always are. In fact, the heat caused by the steel cable rubbing against these copper brake fins even caused many of them to melt. The destruction sent metal pieces flying into the ride's original queue, which was between the launch track and second hill. Thankfully, with all the downtime, the queue had been emptied of all waiting guests, so no one was hit by any flying debris. Going back to the destruction, since the catch car brakes were destroyed ahead of the catch car actually reaching these brakes, the catch car likely collided into the mangled brake fins as the fins no longer aligned with the slots and permanent magnets built into the catch car. This was also an extremely loud commotion, and the incident could be heard all over the park. The dark blue train eventually came to a stop right at the end of the launch track at the base of the tower, with the catch car still somewhere underneath it, as we can see the return cable here. With a normal launch, the catch car would come to a stop much earlier. Taking a look at the final damage, you can see polymer pieces shoved into the lane for the left launch cable. The covering of the left side launch cable is also bent upward. The metal lining of the left covering is also mangled, ripped up and destroyed, while the metal lining and covering of the right side launch cable still looks intact. The left side acceleration brakes are mangled and bent, and the permanent magnets mounted beneath the train likely collided with these bent brake fins, and the catch car brakes are just destroyed and even melted. It was certainly an unsettling scene, and it was devastating that the brand new world's tallest and fastest roller coaster had just destroyed its launch track. In that moment, the ride's future probably went into question even though it had only opened 18 days prior. But most importantly, not a single person was injured as no one was aboard the dark blue train, and no guests were waiting in the ride's original queue. It's actually a good thing that the accident happened when it did, as someone had just rode the train beforehand. And allegedly, the park planned to reopen the ride following that test run of the dark blue train if it had cycled normally. Now, as I'm sure many of you know, Kingda Ka did reopen following this incident, and the ride ran safely for nearly 2 decades until the newly merged Six Flags Entertainment Corporation decided to close and later implode the perfectly working roller coaster with no warning whatsoever, as it was quite expensive to maintain and operate. But it did take a lot of work to get the ride reopened following the accident. Allegedly, Intamin took the blame for the incident as there was no procedures or requirements in place to check the polymer in the base of the C-channel. And perhaps it meant Intamin paid for the repairs also. The launch track needed a lot of components entirely replaced, and I hear that the copper brake fins were especially hard to obtain. Allegedly, Intamin had brake fins produced for the 3 hydraulic launch coasters that were set to debut in 2006, and they took brake fins from the stockpile to resupply Kingda Ka. The dark blue train's fiberglass shell had been heavily destroyed in the accident, but thankfully the train's steel chassis underneath was strong enough to survive the blow. The train, along with the catch car, were reportedly sent back to Intamin for repair. Interestingly, the dark blue train returned when the ride reopened later in 2005, but then disappeared for nearly all of the 2006 season, either to correct an issue later found with that train or for some sort of extensive refurbishment. To prevent the incident from ever happening again, the polymer pieces at the base of the C-channel were modified. Originally, each piece was built with 90-degree ends, which is how the pieces were so easily able to push into the next piece and break them free. To help avoid this, Ka's polymer pieces were modified to feature 45-degree ends, so that if a piece did manage to break off, it would slip over the next piece instead of pushing it forward. I would imagine that all the polymer pieces of every Intamin hydraulic launch coaster were also modified following this incident. Eventually, Kingda Ka C-channel was modified further to no longer feature polymer pieces except for right at the start of the launch. You can see the polymer right here, and then the C-channel features a smooth bottom that looks like one piece, leading all the way to the catch car brakes later down the launch track. Meanwhile, every other Intamin hydraulic launch coaster still retains the polymer pieces at the base of the C-channel, including Formula Rossa at Ferrari World, the fastest hydraulic launch coaster ever built. And just for fun, Accelerator at Knott's Berry Farm, the original hydraulic launch coaster, uses a different polymer piece in its C-channel. It's much wider and fills the entire width of the open channel where the catch car traverses. Top Thrill Dragster at Cedar Point also used this wider polymer up until it was converted to Top Thrill 2. But starting with Storm Runner, which opened after them in 2004, Intamin switched to the more narrow polymer pieces that were featured on Kingda Ka as well. With its new parts and modifications, Kingda Ka reopened on August 4th, 2005 with all 4 trains back in service. But some notable changes were made to the ride area, including the elimination of the short-lived observation deck shown here, which allowed guests to stand right up close to the launch track and get amazing views of each train as they rocketed down the launch track. The most noteworthy change, however, was the elimination of the original queue, which was extremely long and ran through the infield of the coaster. Instead, the ride used what was meant to be an extended queue shown here as the main queue, and since this queue was much shorter than the original, a temporary queue was set up between Kingda Ka and Great American Scream Machine, on an access road behind the Golden Kingdom bathrooms. I believe this temporary extended queue was used through 2006, because when I first started riding Ka in 2007, the temporary queue was no longer a thing. Another interesting change was made to the catwalk on the launch track. Originally, Kingda Ka featured a wide catwalk only on the left side of its launch, but during initial testing it was quickly noticed that the launch track tended to wobble during each launch. So during the summer closure, the left side catwalk was narrowed, and a catwalk was added to the right side of the launch to better balance the launch track. It also made maintaining the right side acceleration brakes much easier. But overall, the elimination of the observation deck in the original queue was required by the state of New Jersey to keep guests away from the launch track in case of any further incidents. And this certainly had an impact on the overall ride area, as the original queue and observation deck allowed for amazing views of the launch. And over the years, the bamboo would grow in so heavily that you could almost not see the launch at all, even from the ride's new queue which remained. The push to keep guests as far away as possible from Kingda Ka is also what led to Zumanjaro Drop of Doom and Kingda Ka not operating at the same time. For many years, only Kingda Ka or Zumanjaro could be on the tower, but not both if they were loaded with riders. It wasn't until the park implemented longer routes on the gondolas of Zumanjaro that the state of New Jersey allowed Kingda Ka and Zumanjaro to operate simultaneously, which provided for amazing rides on Zumanjaro if a train on Kingda Ka was launched up the tower at the same time. Thankfully, Kingda Ka operated very safely for the remainder of its career, as it was intended to, but the 2005 accident was certainly a noteworthy one, and I cannot understate how lucky it was that no one was aboard the train when the accident went down, and that no one was standing in the queue, as things could have gone far worse. It's also lucky that in 2005, every single person did not have a pocket-sized supercomputer with a high-quality 4K camera ready to post things on social media, which helped avoid any recordings of the accident as it occurred. Had the accident occurred today, there would absolutely be a recording of it and it would have gone viral on social media. Great Adventure's statement about the accident was very spot on and surprisingly honest, and thankfully the ride was able to reopen just about 2 months later, and still operate during the rest of the busy summer season. So that will do it for this video covering the true story of Kingda Ka's 2005 accident. I hope that you enjoyed the video and hopefully it helped clear up any confusion about the accident. Be sure to comment below your thoughts, like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe for more nerdy content just like this. I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.